Christian Rudder made headlines a couple of months back when he published a post on the company blog headlined, "We experiment on human beings." That's a very good business strategy. The post detailed ways that OkCupid manipulated user feeds and search results to collect data, an instant media uproar, but Rudder was unapologetic. "Guess what, everybody," he wrote. "If you use the internet, you're the subject of hundreds of experiments at any given time on every scale. That's how websites work." I can't imagine anyone better to spar with Rudder on this point than the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, James Bennet. All I can say is good luck, Christian.
Conversation, which is what we learn about ourselves when we think no one's looking, or who we are when we think no one's looking.
Sure, yeah.
And actually fits with kind of an emerging theme of the day in the sense that I feel like for a tough tech conference we've been hearing people use words like wisdom and empathy more today than we've actually been hearing them use words like disruption and venture capital, which is
sounds good.
Kind of interesting. And so what I'm hoping we'll talk about is what you've learned about human nature via the technology, how you think it's changing us, whether there's some potential for using it to bring out the better angels of our nature more than the lesser lights. And so a place to start, though, is just to make sure people are familiar with the kind of inferences you've drawn from your data. And I don't know what example you particularly like to cite, but the one that comes to mind for me is what you call Wooderson's law.
Oh, yeah. Dating captures so many different components of how people both describe themselves and then the kind of information that they seek to act on with other people, and age is what you're referring to here, with also race and attractiveness and all this other stuff. Wooderson's law is a kind of silly name for a phenomenon of guys. Oh, let me start with women. When you look at who women find most attractive on OkCupid, a 25-year-old woman finds like 25-year-old guys most attractive, 30-year-old women find 30-year-old guys most attractive, 35 and so on. Just kind of a straight line. Like women basically want guys to be their same age until about 40, and then they're like, that's totally fine if you guys don't get any older. And then, but the flip side of that coin is guys, when you look at how they act on OkCupid, they pretty much always gravitate towards the youngest women. So 20-year-olds, it's just a straight ticket. They get older, but they don't necessarily grow up in terms of their sort of preferences. So that in Wooderson is, I like the movie Dazed and Confused, and that's Matthew McConaughey's character from that. And that's basically what he says about dudes and himself. And so that's why I put the name there.
The line is that he...
that's what I love about high school girls, man. I keep getting older, but they stay the same age.
Yeah.
I think is the line. It's close to that. He also says, "Don't touch the leather," which is another really good line from that movie. I don't know.
It's actually, it's a really kind of depressing finding in the book, I have to say. I mean, it's, and I guess revealing of, and generalizable. Is there more, can you point us toward a more hopeful finding?
Yeah, probably not. But I will say, like, look, it can't come as a surprise to anyone that men prefer younger women.
No.
Like we were saying backstage, all you have to do is look at the cover of magazines or who are popular actresses, for example. And I think that's an interesting thing about big data when you talk to. And I've had this discussion with people from 538 or people who work at Facebook or whatever. The more time you spend with this stuff, often the more it just kind of confirms your cynical intuitions about people. But it does so in a way with like a clarity or a precision that's refreshing. So you don't just have like a movie character saying this thing or your own sort of intuitive understanding of that's how the world works. You can sit down and actually put numbers to a phenomenon that you know exists, but not exactly how it exists. So, but asking for hopeful findings to bring
let's
it back.
do that.
Man, that's going to be a tough one. I mean. Well, I will say, I guess the most hopeful thing about the whole experience of running OkCupid and all of the things that I've looked at, but that doesn't appear explicitly in the book, is that people still come to OkCupid and find, husbands, wives, girlfriends, whatever, a hookup for the night, and it works, despite all of people having these kind of, beside all these patterns of people, judging each other on race, and guys only liking younger women, and women, the whole thing, that humanity still functions.
Still fun. I mean, you don't, in the book, you do not come, and you don't in person certainly come across as a cynical guy. And,
no, I'm not.
But I have to say, one of my experiences of reading the book was to once again feel enormously grateful that what my wife chose to marry me, and actually it gives every sign of continuing being willing to be married to me, because it just seems brutal, out there.
I mean, it is, but I don't think, but like, that's the thing, I'm not cynical, or who knows, who knows how it's hard. I'm the last person that should be asked about how I really am, right? These things aren't new, really, you know what I mean? Like, being single is hard, it always is, it sucks, even before the internet, or before online dating, you're like at a bar, the whole thing is just so horrible. If going on first dates, it's horrible, and that's partly why OkCupid has been as successful as it has, and other dating sites have worked as well. Like, it takes out some of the pain of the process, and in some ways it reveals flaws in human nature, if you want to look at it like that, while at the same time kind of correcting for them. So in this age situation where, like, all right, so maybe 40-year-old guys think 20-year-old women are hottest, meanwhile 40-year-old women would prefer to date a guy about her own age, and that obviously is some kind of disconnect. In the days before online dating, if you suddenly find, I'm 39, so if I suddenly found myself divorced, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out to bars and try to party or something? It doesn't even make sense. I don't even know what I would do. I mean, obviously now I would turn to OkCupid, but so like we can measure this stuff. No, but for real, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we've never really shied away from kind of explaining the warts that exist on being single, or that's kind of a weird metaphor, but you know what I mean? Not genital warts, but the ugliness behind some of it. But it's surely no secret to anyone who is actually single that it's hard, and that's kind of why we started writing about this stuff in the first place. Like, what's the point in pretending that it's all like roses and kisses and first dates and champagne toasts and walks on the beach? It's not. It's ridiculous.
One of the things that comes across as you read the book and as I listen to you now is that it is a certain ambivalence you seem to have about technology, period. I mean, you've never used an online dating service yourself. You refer to your Luddite sympathies at one point, and you say you don't give much of yourself to social networks.
No, not really.
Generally. Yeah. And am I right to infer this? And what is your feeling? Is this? Are we, through these social networks, are we decreasing the amount of loneliness in the world? Are we increasing the amount of human connection? Is the technology good for us or bad for us?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's exactly a simple answer to that
I'm
question,
sorry to frame it in such a stupid way, but I'd love to hear you talk about how you see the trade-offs.
I think there are a lot of great things about the internet, and there's a lot of bad things about it, like anything that people have invented. For me, I feel like it kind of like a part that people, I don't know. I mean, I think that they do bring people together in some ways, but also it's like people checking their phones during dinner, and like me sitting, which I do, would sit with my iPad sometimes and just kind of get lost in the game. Like, that's horrible. I hate that about life, So like, it's just a balance. Like, I feel like people are still struggling to find a balance with how much they rely on these things. And for some reason, it always comes back to the hardware for me, because your phone, it's just like always on you. It's just like drives me crazy. And I check it all the time too. That's the part about it that I like the least. But I say that as obviously a content provider. So maybe guys at Apple are like, God damn those websites. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a thing that I think everyone has to find their own level with. There's definitely people, I know many of my friends, I don't really use Instagram, but sometimes I look at my wife's Instagram while she's looking at it. And there are a lot of my friends that clearly get a lot out of posting photos of Chicago while they're riding around on a bike. That is awesome, I would never do that in a million years. And so I think it's one of these things, you just kind of find the right place for technology in your own life, and people absorb it in good or bad amounts. But I think television is like the same way. There's a lot of people I've enjoyed watching The Sopranos or whatever. I've enjoyed watching NBA basketball on TV also. But obviously, if you sit and you watch television for 8 hours a day, it sucks for you, you know? And so people just have to find their own balance. And this stuff is all so new that it's going to take a while for moors and just kind of like clear thinking to really develop around it, I think.
Have you, from your immersion in watching relationships develop on OkCupid and then studying the data at the depth that you've been able to do it, have you come away feeling better about us as human beings, or worse?
I mean, I won't say worse exactly, not better. But I will say, just one point of clarification, we don't really watch relationships develop. I mean, that's kind of one of the tragedies of running a dating site, is that we never know.
I don't mean individual, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we just never know who goes on dates. We don't know if they fall in love. We don't know if they end up hating each other. We never know that stuff. So we have a very limited purview or jurisdiction. Like, we can kind of control who contacts each other, and then the rest of their lives is up to them, whether they hate each other or what. And we can infer that if the people are back on OkCupid the next day looking at other people, they probably hated each other. But we don't even know if they went on a date in the first place. So we have a very limited view into that whole process. And that's why, certainly in the book, I really try to focus. I don't think I really talk about, I definitely don't go that deep into love or any of this other stuff that you expect a founder of a dating site to go into. It's a lot of the kind of the first blush of meeting someone, or what gets people to, what factors come into play when deciding who you like, just meaning right off the bat, or who you message, these kind of low intent actions, because we just don't see the deeper stuff on a dating site.
But you know that people are getting married because of your service. I mean,
we do, but there's there's this big disconnect to I know how many people exchange messages, and then I have to walk it, and then I know at the very other end of the sort of funnel, or whatever business speak word you want to use, I know the people who leave OkCupid because they found someone. And that's a subset of, when I decided to stop using a site, I was a while ago, I was I don't ever want to read Gawker again. I didn't tell Gawker, I just stopped going to the site. So there's a lot of people who decide they don't want to use OkCupid, and we have no idea, they just disappear. But there are some people who do come back, they're I found my boyfriend on OkCupid, I'm going to go there, I'm going to disable my account, and you select a bunch of crap from a menu, and then you say that that's what happened, and then you can tell us that you met someone. So we have this huge lacuna, or whatever you want to call it, blind spot between the message and then when they actually leave. But in the book, I say that people get married because that's working backwards from the data of the handful of people, relative handful of people who come back and tell us. And I say handful, I think about 2,500 people a day tell us that they found someone on OkCupid. And then about 300 of those tell us the exact person that they had a relationship, that they're who they're in a relationship with. That's out of 5 million or now 6 million messages a day between people that we create.
And so, and I'll open it up to the floor after this question. But so, do you take great satisfaction from that?
Yeah,
there are people getting married and having babies because they met by your service.
Right. Sure. Sometimes babies without getting married.
Also.
Yeah, that I think is the answer to whether it has made me more cynical or not. I mean, certainly people in the aggregate, I think almost any consideration of people in the aggregate is going to make anyone cynical, That's how you get wars and racism and all kinds of horrible crowd actions. But when when I meet people, and I meet a lot of people who have met a specific person that they have fallen in love with from OkCupid, or even just had a lot of sex because of OkCupid, or whatever, that actually makes me happy. I'm very excited to hear those stories. So that is the part for me. That's the kind of gilding of the whatever this other thing is. That's the satisfaction, and that's true of almost everybody. I think the people who work there too. I'm the success stories, so to speak. Whether the people that telling us through some interface or we meet them in person, it's pretty cool.
Let me open it up to you guys. Does anybody have I think there are microphones circulating.
Yes, there's one over here.
Over there?
I see a blue shirt with a hand.
No, there's somebody's actually got a mic over
hey,
here. Please, you have the mic.
To your right. Hey. Hi, my name is Natalie. So
hey, Natalie.
Thanks for the talk. I think this conversation and also OkCupid in general is kind of one giant sociological experiment. So just as totally out of curiosity, what other sociological experiments would you like to run or are of interest to you in your life?
would I like to run or of interest to me in my life? Like, I'm not really a sociologist, you know, so we don't really think, like when we test stuff on OkCupid, it's primarily or almost exclusively to figure out how we're going to run the site. Running a dating site is, unlike something with Facebook or Twitter, where there's a lot of existing connections out there that you can rely on and exploit and connect and reflect back to people. Dating site is like an enormous warehouse full of like millions of strangers all milling around waiting for you to do something with them. And if you leave people to their own device, they can ruin your site. And so we have to, you know, not intentionally, obviously, but just human nature, again, will cause big problems for your site. So we have to figure out, it's all different variations on, well, I want to say crowd control, but that's a very negative word. Just like how to suggest people to one another, why or how or when to introduce person A to person B. And those are all basically that's what most of our work is focused on at OkCupid. As far as specifics, like a lot of the stuff is just like so mundane. It's not even, I mean, like any site, like let's change the subject line in an email, or like, should this be in the menu or should this be in the top nav? Like these dumbass things. And then sometimes it's like, well, would our algorithm be better if it did X, you know? And you know, speaking, I guess, kind of getting back to what the person who introduced me was talking about, you know, there's a lot of real-world heuristics for how to introduce somebody. So your friend comes to you and they're like, oh man, I'm lonely, I've dated all my coworkers, I'm tired of my people from church or whatever, I want to meet somebody, you know, and you can run through a bunch of stuff in your head, you know, it's like birds of a feather. So do I know somebody a lot like this person? Same interests or whatever. There's opposites attract, obviously. There's like, hey, you guys live near each other, or like, they just got dumped too, so here you go. You know, like I mean, but for real. Or there's like the old world way of, you know, you guys both come from a good family and that is it and good luck, you know? So like, there's a lot of ways that people do that. And these algorithms, these recommendation algorithms, whether it's OkCupid's, Netflix telling you what movie they think you might like, or Facebook telling you what news from your friends you're going to be interested in, or making a guess. They're all the guesses of the people who wrote those algorithms. There's no canonical way to solve any of those problems, and there never will be. That's why Netflix has a prize to try to improve their thing, right? And so all of these things, they're just people taking guesses, just like a person might be like, oh, you know who would be perfect? You guys both went to SMU. That's going to be awesome. You should meet her. You'll have a lot to talk about. So like that's our version of that type of thing.
But you have found that similar answers to very simple questions can be remarkably predictive.
Sure, yeah.
Of compatibility.
Yeah, you can go through and you can dig through the data and find all kinds of interesting things. And like, I mean, and we do that. But you know, ultimately, like we look at our job as there's not a lot of talk. I mean, there's maybe no talk in the office of compatibility in this way. Like it's like a sort, just like the way if you search for apple pie on Google, you're going to get some sorted list of results that represent their best guess of what you're trying to get at. And maybe there's some song called apple pie, or maybe there's an apple pie recipe that'll probably be their first guess. They don't really know. And so they throw up their best guess based on prior stuff. And we're just trying to sort when you come to us in San Francisco or New York or whatever. We've got 250,000 people we could show you. And we've got to figure out how to sort them and tell you who you might like to talk to. The rest of that stuff is all up to you, pretty much. You know, we don't try to solve love or any of this stuff because, like, you could have somebody that's like a great match with you on paper. They're hot, whatever. Y'all both went to SMU, and you sit down and you're having a cup of coffee with this person, and they just have this crazy smell, or their laugh is annoying, or like who knows what the hell is, you know, like we don't even try to get involved with that. I don't want to get anywhere near that, you know, and like. That stuff, like it's just all of the people who have relationships from OkCupid, you know, they'll come up and they'll thank me and they'll say, oh, that's amazing. But they did all the work, you know. It's all the messages and like the love and the like and all of that stuff. That's all them, you know. We were just trying to like get people to talk to each other like an introduction, basically. So. There was somebody over there. I
want to do one more question if we could. Is there a mic over here? There's a mic.
Yes. Hi. Neil Clark Warren has written a lot about relationships, algorithms, founder of eHarmony.
Yeah.
And just in terms of, he's very much a big proponent on, he was a marriage counselor and started because he was trying to reduce the divorce rate and creating a better algorithm to you know, assess long-term compatibility.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that, or algorithms, or how to improve? Are you working to improve that or to help address that issue?
I mean, as per my previous comments, I have a pretty dim view on that task. Obviously, we're competitors with eHarmony, so I don't have a lot of incentive to think that he's doing a good job. But I, like I just don't think. I think it's kind of a little bit of hocus pocus stuff, and like this idea. I know eHarmony used to. I mean, eHarmony has a special place in our hearts because we kind of started OkCupid as an answer to the way we thought they were doing things wrong. So, they used to, and I don't know if they still do this. It takes too long to sign up for me to find out that they would give you like 3 or 4 people a day, and that's like those are your people. And if you don't like them, well, you just have to chill and wait till tomorrow until we find someone else. And that just was too curated and too prescriptive, and seemed just destined to be wrong. And so we wanted it more wide open, as per what I was kind of just saying. So I don't know exactly what he's doing, so I can't really comment on that. I'm dubious. But also, I have an incentive to be dubious, so you don't have to trust me. I want to answer her question because she tried to ask it twice. So let's just do this really quickly.
Without a mic.
So let's be honest. Everybody that I know that uses dating websites mostly uses it for sex. Okay, I think it's. Most people, not many. Many people use it for relationships. But I think Tinder has given permission for people to use these websites for essentially hookups, and it's changed the whole landscape for dating websites. And so I'd like, especially younger people, including my own children. So,
oh, they're going to appreciate this question.
And so I'd like to know what you think has been the impact of Tinder and sites like that on the dating website industry for those who are looking for authentic relationships.
Sure. Another bit of full disclosure here. Tinder is also owned by IAC, who owns us, and who owns Match, so I know Tinder very well. First, I don't know if I agree with your premise that everyone uses these things for sex. I don't think that that's true. It might be true among you and your peers, I guess, or whatever group you're surveying. That said, I think Tinder, there is absolutely no question that Tinder has made it. I think of Tinder as having kind of kicked in that last bit of the wall of stigma that used to be around online dating. Back when I'm 39, we started OkCupid, and when I was 29, something like that, 28. And then, like, before we started the site, I thought it was like kind of weird to meet people online, And I think Facebook's popularity, where you can keep in touch with your cousins or your coworkers or whatever online. It's a very small step to looking for a stranger or a romance online. But still among like college kids and people under 25, I think Tinder has really finally broken that down. And there's no question, it's super popular. But I don't know, I think the people who use Tinder, it's like people finding their own level with this stuff. Like the people who use Tinder are the people who are most looking for the things that Tinder is best at doing, Like if you're 23, for the most part, this day and age, you're not looking for someone to get married to. And Tinder is great for finding people in a kind of like relatively low friction way. It's very fast. The messaging is good. It has not impacted us at all. This has been the best year we've had year over year. I think they've been purely positive for the industry, for OkCupid. Again, they're also owned by the same company as us, though, so you don't have to believe me.
You have a lot. I'm totally going over time here, and I'm sorry to do this, but I got to ask you in light of that. There's in your OK Trends post, you had one line in there that was consonant with what you just said. People are exactly as shallow as their technology allows them to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you feel that you have any kind of moral obligation to use the technology to make them less shallow, or is it your role to simply provide the means and let them find their own level?
Well, we'll put aside the role for a second, or the responsibility. What is the reality? Like, I get asked this question a lot in the context of the kind of race data, where just the quick synopsis here is that black men and women universally on dating sites are underappreciated, undermessaged, underliked, under-replied to when they do messages, all this stuff. So people will ask me, well, can't you change that? I think the resounding answer is, like, what are we going to do to change that? If I take someone, just to take the race case, I'm like, all right, this white dude is not liking any black women. Guess what, dude? I'm showing you a lot of black women now like one. I can't make that happen. And I'm sorry to speak quickly here, but like you can't change what's inside of somebody, right? And what they're going to conclude if we suddenly do that, if they truly are not interested in that kind of relationship, they're just like, fuck this, I'm going somewhere else. And so like, it just doesn't work like that. You can't make somebody think something different any more than the New York Times can make you read a particular article or not. You know, they can do it the best job that they can do, but they can't change that kind of stuff. So, you know, I mean, and I'm not trying to like abdicate any responsibility here, but I just don't think that power even exists, that you're asking whether we should be using it or not.
All right. I wish I had the power to keep us going longer, but thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.